Analysis of the 2016 election by Sitara Alavi and Savannah Siegler. During the 2016 Democratic primaries, Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders went head-to-head to win the Democratic Party nomination. Hillary Clinton won due to a large amount of her supporters. Her supporters tended to be from big cities and the areas surrounding it. They tended to be minorities. 7 out of 10 Hispanic voters voted for Clinton, and 8 out of 10 Black voters voted for Clinton. Her voters also tended to be from southern counties due to the larger African-American population, seniors, because 70% of seniors voted for Clinton, people of higher income and education levels, people who tended to be more moderate, and people who had a higher priority on experience and electability, while Sanders supporters tended to be younger, with just 70% of voters under 30, independents with just 1/4 of voters, and very liberal. Top issues for voters in the 2016 Democratic primaries were the economy, and this was especially important in Ohio, which was a swing state, and trade with other nations taking away American jobs. On the economy in Ohio, Clinton said, "I stood up for our companies in New York. I will stand up for our companies in Ohio and across America. It's exciting for me. I'm really totally committed to bringing back manufacturing." And on trade with other nations taking away American jobs, Sanders said about Clinton, "She has received money from drug companies and the fossil fuel industry. She has given speeches on Wall Street for $225,000 a pop." And this just shows how supporters can see Clinton as not being in support of American economy and rather only being in it for the money. Here's an infographic that shows supporters of either Clinton or Sanders by state. We see that in the southern states and states with larger cities tended to be in favor of Clinton, while smaller states with less populations and that were up in the northwestern region tended to be Bernie supporters. There's also a quote mentioned here from Hillary Clinton's campaign announcement video in April of 2015, and it says, "I'm ready to do something too. I'm running for president. Americans have fought their way back from tough economic times, but the desk is still stacked in favor of those at the top. Every day Americans need a champion, and I want to be that champion. So you can do more than just get by. You can get ahead and stay ahead, because when families are strong, America is strong."
Trump won the primary election when the Never Trump movement failed, and they knew they had failed once Trump had won New York in April 2016, and that was when everyone knew that he was going to be the 2016 Republican candidate for president. One of the main reasons the Never Trump movement failed was the fact that there was no other credible candidates in the running. And two factors that led to his win in the primary was the polarizing environment of America at the time and the potency and honesty of his message. Rich Lowry, the editor of the National Review and leader of the Never Trump movement, stated on Fox News, "I have to tip my hat to what Trump has achieved. It is completely incredible, because it was so unlikely for so long that Trump was going to win, but he was able to tap into many Republicans' anger, some of it which was triggered by racism about President Obama and his policies, and to broader fears of terrorism and economic decline, and into a general disgust with professional politicians that they had seen, and how the general people did not feel like they were being represented by career politicians, and they wanted someone more like them, which is ultimately what led to Trump's victory in the primaries."
We can see in the chart on the right that Trump supporters tended to be either men, white, and or non-college grads, while Clinton supporters tended to be college grads, non-white, and female. We can also see in the report done by MSNBC that Clinton actually won the popular vote by a very significant amount, while Trump, losing the popular vote, still won the electoral vote, which is seen in the map in between the two images.
Many relate Trump's rise to power with the connection to Sarah Palin. Sarah Palin was John McCain's pick for vice presidency, and she was also not the typical politician. She was not from Washington, and she was known for saying whatever was on her mind. She wasn't very well versed on politics either. She struggled with basic questions such as, why do you think Roe v. Wade was a bad decision? what we see with Sarah Palin is she was a common person. There's pictures that she's been photographed with her kid in the grocery store and been known to just say like the quotes like "I can see Russia from my backyard," regardless of its accuracy. But people related to Palin and felt that she would be someone that could help the common person. David Brooks, a New York Times consultant, stated, "I don't think he could have known at the time, but he took a disease that was running through the Republican Party, anti-intellectualism, disrespect for facts, and he put it right in the center of the party." This quote was about John McCain picking Sarah Palin, and it shows how Palin sort of awakened a silent majority of the Republican Party about how they actually feel, and this silent majority was never present until Palin was able to give them a voice and speak for them, and that truly set the platform for Trump and gave him a leeway into that silent majority.
During Bill Clinton's presidency in the 90s, Hillary Clinton, as well as the rest of the Clinton family's life, was very public. There were 3 major scandals that happened during her husband's presidency. The first was the family's finances, the second was the Lewinsky scandal, and the third was the Paul Jones scandal. While these did great damage to the reputation, there were also lots of mini scandals that did lots of harm as well. There was the Whitewater financial shenanigans, the cover-up after the travel office firings, the documents flying out of the Vince Foster's office window following his suicide, the mysteriously appearing Rose Law Firm billing records, as well as numerous others. Another thing that did great damage to the Clintons' reputation was Clintopathy, which is a pathological hatred for the Clintons rooted in their roles as symbols of the hippie 60s and the yuppie 80s. While Hillary Clinton's life during her husband's presidency did great damage to the family's name, perhaps the most damaging thing to her name was her time as Secretary of State. Her time as Secretary of State had 2 major scandals that created a large amount of distrust with the American population. The first was a private email server that she used and set up in her home in New York. She used this email for all her electronic correspondence, both work and personal related, during her 4 years as Secretary of State. She did not use or even activate a state.gov email account, which would have been hosted on servers owned and managed by the U.S. government. This may have violated federal requirements. While Hillary Clinton was on trial for her private use of email servers, she said, "I thought using one device would be simpler, and obviously it hadn't worked out that way." This was a major issue because it caused great distrust, again, with the American population because the government could not track what Hillary was saying or exposing about the government. Another major issue under Hillary's time as Secretary of State was the Benghazi crisis. This was when Islamic militants attacked a U.S. diplomatic compound in 2012 and killed 4 Americans while Clinton was Secretary of State. 2 of the parents that were killed are suing Clinton for extreme carelessness in handling confidential and classified information on her server. This may have revealed the location of the U.S. soldiers to State Department employees in Libya. They're also suing for false and defamatory statements negligently, recklessly, and purposefully, and or intentionally with malice.
Obama's main failure during his presidency was making the ability to make the American people feel safe within the threat of terrorism and with having a stable economy. He talked in such an ambiguous way, which rarely gave true opinions, and that made the American people feel as if they were being lied to and were not told the whole truth. Unlike Donald Trump, President Obama was a career politician. His answers were all very well thought out and rehearsed, and he failed to be relatable with the American people, which was his major downfall and which opened a door for Trump, because Trump was always so honest, and he was not afraid to speak his mind, and he was not a career politician, so people were able to relate with him. He was even able to claim that John McCain wasn't a war hero. He appeared to suggest during an interview on CNN that Megyn Kelly was menstruating, and he compared Ben Carson to a child molester. And none of these comments did much damage to his campaign, and that is because Obama wouldn't say anything like this, and he was so well thought out and rehearsed with his answers that people were looking for honesty, and they were looking for someone to tell the truth and someone that they can relate to and someone that could be a voice for them and for the silent majority that Palin had awakened. And Trump stated in a tweet after the interview with CNN where he mentioned Megyn Kelly, "So many politically correct fools in our country. We have to all get back to work and stop wasting time and energy on nonsense." Which this was almost seen as refreshing by the people after Obama, because they no longer felt lied to. They felt they could relate to Trump, and because he was one of them, he would implement policies that helped the common people. Because he said what was on his mind, no matter how polarizing, he was being honest and saying what he wanted. And I think that the combination with being directly after Obama and Hillary Clinton's terrible reputation and the potency and the polarization of the United States during this time led to Donald Trump's rise to victory in the 2016 presidential election.
Due to large public outcry after the inauguration, there were many marches and protests all around the nation. Two of the most notable marches and protests are the Not Our President campaign and the Women's March. The Not Our President campaign started as a Facebook page and it's a gathering of protests on Inauguration Day. One very notable quote from the protest was from a man in Spanish referring to Mr. Trump. He said, "I came here because people came out to protest the racism that he's promoting. I'm not scared for myself personally. What I'm worried about is how many children are going to be separated from their families. It will not just be one, it will be thousands of families." Another important protest was the Women's March on Washington, and it was hundreds of thousands of women gathering in Washington, D.C. and many other cities across the nation. It began in March. It began as only a Facebook post, as what the organizers could hope be a sustained campaign of protests unifying demonstrators around issues like reproductive rights, immigration, and civil rights.
Here are some questions the audience can answer to further their analysis of the 2016 election.